Good morning, good people. Welcome to Disorder in the Courts, continuing coverage of Nevada versus Robert Tellis, or as a lot of people like to call him, the baby boy. I don't know. He's probably one of the most, I would say, childish defendants we've seen on this channel in a while. Good morning, Sharon. So they are supposed to start court right now, but yesterday they were something like a half hour late to starting the court stream. So I want to show you. I was just hey Stacy, good to see you. So I pulled up a couple things to show while we're waiting for them to come into the court, because yesterday we were sitting here just yapping for a half an hour and we're like, where is he? So this should be interesting. I think it's really good from Court TV. They show a campaign video he did when he was trying to convince, the good citizens of Las Vegas and Clark County to vote for him. So you kind of get to see a different side of him, where he's campaigning and appealing to his audience. Let's watch this as we wait for court to start. It's it may be instructive, it may be helpful. He may take the stand today, you all, because the state rested their case yesterday. And he has said that he's definitely going to testify. And never know what the defense strategy is. A lot of times they will put their client on the stand, bang, right out the gate. Sometimes they will put witnesses on the stand that they believe will kind of help explain or set a foundation for the suspect testimony, for the defendant's testimony. So we'll see. Don't know exactly what they're going to do yet, but they did say they'd have something like 10 witnesses. So we should get through all their witnesses this week if it's going to be moving at the same pace as the prosecution did. But let's take a look at this real quick. Hold on, let me change the view here.
I'm Rob Tellis, and I'm your Clark County Public Administrator. A few years ago, when I started my first term, I found a disturbing situation at the office. Unfortunately, I found that there were cases that weren't being closed and hadn't been closed for years. I also found that checks to families were waiting to go out so long that the checks went stale before the families could get them. Tragically, there were even situations where the family members died before they could receive their own checks. But I'm very happy to say that we've turned that all around under my leadership. My staff and I have increased our customer service levels. We are now closing cases, and we are also making sure that checks get in the hands of families even faster. And we do it for you. I'd like to ask you for your help now.
What do you all think so far? I'm glad. Did you get it all worked out, Stacy, with your Wi-Fi? So he looks much happier, of course, and peppier. He definitely prepared a lot for this video, but it also comes off as, and you're hearing this from a marketing and PR expert, okay? Voters and viewers and things like that, one thing that really turns people off is inauthenticity. And he just does not come across as authentic. The other thing he does is he seems to be making his own personal gripes part of his campaign promise. He had these allegations, and let me just put it this way. When you're campaigning, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your message gets out there, your message. And what he starts with is an anti other message. He's speaking against other people. He's not really speaking about what he can do. It is a very casual look. You know, honestly, I understand why you're saying that, Teacup. That didn't come across as odd to me because it's not very in the West and like kind of the Silicon Valley scape. People dress like this every day going to the office, every single day. It's a very natural look, but I can see that being a turnoff for people who are trying to vote for a politician, right? So anyway, let me keep going. Let's see if there's more.
Ask you to please be sure to vote for me in this year's election. Please be sure to tell your friends and family.
So basically his message is vote for me and vote for me and I'll go chasing after other people, you know, and accusing other administrations of corruption in order to, you know, in order to win, to protect you. There should be a much more grand vision, much more like I don't know. And of course the public administration office, I mean, whoop-de-doo, who's paying attention to this, right? Yes, Stacy, it is in Silicon Valley. A suit is actually looked at as overdressing. In fact, when I was a new PR person and I moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco, I mean, I was young. Okay. I was really young, but I had this client and they were about to go speak somewhere. And they asked me for advice on what to wear. And it was a guy. And I told him to wear a suit and tie. And he was the only guy on stage with a suit and tie. And he kind of came off as not really understanding the audience. He wasn't relatable at all. So I would say that he's probably fitting in right here, Robert Tellis, with his constituency. Because most of the constituency in Las Vegas, the only reason they're running around in suit and tie, the business landscape there is basically gambling and casinos, you know. So really, you're just wearing a suit and tie to dress up. So it's a really different culture and environment, and they haven't shown up in court yet. Let's play a little bit more of this.
About it. This is an important race, and I need your help. I'm Rob Tellis, and I'm running for Clark County Public Administrator. Thank you.
So he ended up losing that election. See, Cinnamon knows. I think we had this conversation once before, right, Cinnamon Girl? Yeah, I lived up there for nearly 30 years. And he's like fitting right in right there. Hey, Evil Queen. So there is another video that I haven't watched yet, but just interested me because it is about this. It says former client recalls Robert Tellis as angry, inept lawyer. Let's see.
In my conduct, that I'm going to be released from my own position. I expect that to happen. That speaks volumes to this court.
Right now, live at 6, Robert Tellis removed from office. More on the ruling from a judge to remove the official from the public administrator's role.
Plus, discussing Superintendent Dr.
Interesting. So, a button down without a tie and roll up sleeves. Yeah, a lot of people choose that. There's a couple different looks in Silicon Valley. There's a few different looks in Silicon Valley. One is like the kind of sporty business guy look with the t-shirt like Tellis was wearing there, and then like a puffy vest. And a lot of the conferences that you go to in Silicon Valley, they'll give out these jackets and vests, and they're usually kind of the sport. Yes, the vest, Cinnamon Girl. In fact, I was just reminded it's one of my former clients' birthdays today, and he was like, man, he looks so damn good in that vest. But they'll wear the like Patagonia vest with a long sleeve kind of shirt. It's all clean and it's all well put together. It's not like sloppy or anything like that, but it kind of looks like they're ready to go from that meeting at the black turtlenecks. Steve Jobs set that trend, and that was just because he didn't want to have to decide what to wear every day. So, oh my gosh, basically there's a lot of recreational play, not play. There's a lot of recreational meetings, like in Silicon Valley. A lot of people are doing their meetings on the golf course or at the racquetball club or before or after a tennis match. So what they do is they, they'll go meet for a golf, and then they'll all go to lunch, and then they come to the office after that, and they can't be bothered to get, dressed up in a suit and tie after their golf game. And they might have like a casual dinner date to go out to afterward. It's so funny. So anyway, we got off on a little bit of a tangent there based on what TELLES was wearing. Just letting you know they are not in court yet. So let's keep watching this.
Dr. Jesus Jar's contract, what was brought up during today's meeting, and what was decided regarding his future with that resulted in his inability to do his job best. But the county's attorney argued that it was TELLES' actions that resulted in his inability to do his job.
The fault of Mr. TELLES' custody status is his and his alone. He can't do his job because he killed Jeff Bierman. And whether that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt at this stage doesn't make any difference. The fault of his custody status is his and his alone.
The county put out a statement saying that they'll appoint someone to fulfill this position at the end of TELLES' term, which ends on January 1st.
And officials from the public administrator's office are reacting tonight. Assistant Public Administrator Rita Reed wrote,
tips, certain conclusions that Detective Gaddis arrived in establishing her probable cause, and we would anticipate in basically roughly him testifying to the same thing as has been previously addressed before the court in our renewed motion since my being retained concerning the Franks v. Delaware motion.
Okay, and I do recall reading that report. You're not going to call him first, right?
No.
I mean, so
okay, they're not going to call him first.
His report again.
Thank you. Yes.
And then make a determination. So I'm assuming the state's making a motion to not allow.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be able to review that report again.
Understood. We have noticed him up as an expert witness. We have him available, and obviously we do this prior to the trial starting to see where the evidence is, the state of the evidence that's been presented by the state. He is available to testify. I've explained the concerns that the state has, and perhaps Your Honor would have with his proposed testimony, and we anticipate Your Honor wanting a proffer, but I've provided ahead of time his opinion by way of proffer, so the court knows the sum and substance of his testimony.
Okay. And so you won't call him before the lunch hour then?
We will not.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. Your Honor, so we were yesterday after court, we were provided with a series of proposed exhibits. The state has some concerns as to the admissibility as to a number of them. So our thought was maybe if we could address maybe some of the issues regarding admissibility now. What I didn't want to do is perpetually interrupt witnesses with objections on this. And certainly if we had had these a little earlier, we could have at least maybe brought these concerns up.
Who are you? Who's your first witness?
It would be Dr. Mark Chambers. And what we would propose to the court, because this case has been moving forward so efficiently, a number of people are going to be available at the end of the week. We've been reaching out, trying to get people to move their schedules to be available today. There's been some difficulties in reference to that. What we anticipate doing is calling Dr. Mark Chambers this morning and then having a break so we could address these issues that should be addressed out of the presence of the jury to avoid an interrupted presentation of the defense's case.
Okay, so you only gonna have one witness today?
Correct. As of right now, we're waiting for another witness. She had called Crime Stoppers. She was available tomorrow. We're trying to move her up till this morning. We called the hallway. She is not present yet. Again, everybody was subpoenaed to testify towards the end of the week. So we're trying to accommodate the real-time schedule of this trial.
Okay, so we could let the jury go, but we could deal with some of these exhibits?
Correct.
Certainly.
All right, but we don't have to do it before Dr. Chambers
Yeah, we
comes
could put Dr. Chambers on.
in. Okay,
Judge, can I have the evidence proposal so I can make a record?
The other thing is, I believe the defense will stipulate to the admission of 312 and then 316 to 336.
That is correct. And obviously, the purpose of stipulations is to make the trial process smoother and a better presentation of evidence.
So we're not getting much from this. I want to address some Beach's comment. I have made a decision, some Beach, to dive into Wade Wilson. I could tell that it's one of those situations where you have to set aside time to really dive in, and I plan to do that because he seems fascinating and there's a lot to talk about there. I haven't streamed many past trials here. I've thought about it. What I was thinking, what I was actually thinking about doing was going through, reviewing some of that, going through the Wade Wilson stuff on my new channel, more from a perspective of the calls and the interview with his dad and stuff like that. So yes, I do know that, Chopper. I do know that. I appreciate you always giving us the spoiler alert information. So what I'm gathering from this, y'all, is, oh no, the trial. I thought the trial already happened. I'm pretty sure the trial already happened and he was found guilty. Is my understanding. Am I not right about that? That was my understanding. And then all the jail calls started coming out, and the man is a freaking lunatic. He's a lunatic. So in this trial, it appears that what's going on is it's possible that TELLES is still going to testify today, because it sounds like they had some scheduling issues with the witnesses that they called. They want to call a doctor. Jeffrey Dahmer, interesting. Okay, good. You Googled and we were right. Just kidding, some Beach. Just being silly, being a child. It kind of sounds like, okay, now look, he was standing there dissociating on his own, all by himself. Look, he's thinking about what he's going to say on the stand. He knows he's probably going to get called today. He's sitting there. That's called dissociation. He's standing there just kind of in his own little world, trying to think about what am I going to say? How am I going to answer that question? How am I going to
Thank you all. Please be seated.
does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Strauss, would you call your first
Yes,
witness?
the defense calls Dr. Mark Chambers.
Okay, let's see what Dr. Chambers has to say. Is he going to say anything about this? Is he going to explain how DNA of a man can get underneath somebody's fingernails without that man being the murderer? That's what I want to know.
Please remain standing, doctor, and raise your right hand, face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mark Chambers, Markchambers.
Thank you. Dr. Chambers, if you could begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, beginning with your education.
All right. I attended undergraduate studies at Stanford University, where I graduated with a major in psychology and a minor in biology. I graduated with distinction, which meant that I was in the top 10% of my class. I also was admitted to Phi Beta Kappa during that time. I also earned a master's degree at Stanford in education. My doctoral studies were conducted at Northwestern University, where I earned a degree in clinical psychology.
How are you currently employed?
I am self-employed with a practice in clinical and forensic psychology.
If you could please explain to us the difference between clinical psychology versus forensic psychology.
Clinical psychology is probably what most people think about when they think about psychology or psychologists. A clinical psychologist deals with problems in the human condition, mental disorders, or other kinds of personal problems people may have in their lives, like depression or anxiety. They do psychological testing to help better understand a person's issues or problems or situation. And then they provide treatment services, which we usually refer to as psychotherapy or counseling.
If you could explain to us too a little more in detail what is psychology. I think we all have a pretty general idea, but if we could just address that this morning.
Psychology is the science of behavior. And although most people might think of it as relating to thought processes or something that goes on inside the brain, that's not something that we can access directly with any kind of psychological or scientific methods. So we have to look at people's behavior, and then from that, we sometimes infer things about the way that the human brain works or why people behave the way they do. But ultimately, we are looking at behavior and then drawing conclusions from that.
In reference to forensic psychology, which you have been qualified in previous hearings to give expert testimony concerning, is it fair to say that psychology is basically taking well-accepted principles, scientific principles concerning human behavior and applying it to specific circumstances?
Yes, and those specific circumstances are related to some sort of court issue. So a forensic psychologist may do work in family court, conducting evaluations or child custody assessments. They may work in criminal courts like this one here to provide expert testimony that might help the trier of fact, either the judge or the jury, to understand a particular issue that's germane to the case. Sometimes we also work in lawsuits and provide testimony about maybe in a car accident, what kind of psychological trauma an individual has sustained. But ultimately, as you said, forensic psychology is the application of basic psychological principles and research to the issue at hand in the court-related proceeding. And as a result of that, a forensic psychologist sometimes has to be a little bit of a jack of all trades, because there are a lot of different areas of psychology that can apply to a court-related setting. And so we have to know a little bit about a lot of different things.
Okay, would you kind of, I guess, analogize that to that of a coroner? I mean, a coroner is called upon to give an opinion concerning manner of death.
Certainly, yes. A coroner has to know about head injuries and gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma and poisoning and all different ways of death that somebody might experience. So they can't be an expert in any one of those areas. They kind of have to know all of those things so that when they perform an autopsy, they can bring that knowledge to bear to determine the cause of death.
So we have scientific principles applied to specific fact scenarios that help judges, juries make certain determinations concerning issues of fact. Fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
You've given and been qualified to give testimony concerning eyewitness identification. If you could, and other matters, if you could please explain to us other areas in which you have been qualified and given expert testimony concerning.
Sure. One of the big things that I often testify about has to do with the reliability of memory, because a lot of court proceedings rely on the testimony of witnesses, and by virtue of that, the reliability of their memory as to what they observed or experienced, or what kind of testimony they're bringing to the court. So there's a lot of research on how memory works, the way in which it can be defective, and that can be helpful to the trier of fact to judge the credibility or reliability of a particular witness's testimony, rather than just assuming that whatever they say is automatically true. I've also testified about the effects of various medications or substances on behavior, including drugs and alcohol, because those things can distort the way people behave, the way that they think, the way that they react to certain situations. And so that can be helpful to know. Stressful situations, trauma can also affect a person's behavior and reactions to certain situations. And so it can be helpful for a trier of fact to know more about that before making a judgment about the case in front of them.
And just so I'm clear then, you've been qualified to give testimony as a forensic psychologist, and as a forensic psychologist, your testimony could address a whole myriad of situations that affect people's behavior and why they do things.
That is correct, yes.
You have been called on in prior cases by defense counsel,
Yes.
myself included.
Correct.
Have you been called upon to give testimony as a forensic psychologist in prosecutions?
I certainly have, yes.
Federal cases, state cases, if you could please explain to us just briefly your involvement in prosecutions.
I've testified and consulted all over the world. I think if I had to add them up, the number of prosecution versus defense cases is pretty evenly matched. I've testified in family court, I've testified in civil court, I've testified in military and federal courts, as I said, in many, many jurisdictions.
And when you're called upon, let's say by a defense team or a defense attorney, you
Seems
are
like
not
a very qualified
retained
expert.
to give a specific opinion, fair to say?
No, I'm here
Defense
to,
oriented or prosecution oriented, something like that.
correct. I'm here to elucidate the relevant psychological principles and research and knowledge that will help the trier of fact better understand a case. In some cases, it's not favorable to the party that is consulting me. And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you because the research says this, and that's probably bad for your case. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes that means a little loss of work, but I've got plenty of work, so that's not really a concern for me.
In reference to these scientific principles upon which you draw opinions or conclusions, you're not a research psychologist.
I am not. I mean, I was trained in research. I have done research, but in my role as a forensic psychologist, my primary skill is understanding research, being able to read research studies that have been published by other researchers, and then gleaning from that the appropriate principles and understanding about human behavior that's relevant to the case.
And these research studies, again, fair to say, cover a wide array of circumstances.
Correct.
Your job is to review the research. And let me ask you this, the research, whether it be concerning false confessions, whether it be concerning memory, it's open to peer review. And if you could explain that to us.
Sure. So the peer review process is a safeguard to make sure that research that is published has done.
So while this expert
things
is
that
just
it needs
qualifying
to
himself,
be reliable. So,
I'll explain this.
the
So
research team conducts
Some
a
Beach, look at the
study
screen
and
right
then
now.
coalesce
Well, in a
their
second.
findings, and then they
This
put
is the new
together
channel.
a paper or an article
That's what
that
it
they'd
looks
to
like.
publish. They then submit
You should
it
be
to
able to
the
find it.
journal that they would like to
But
publish
if
it.
you can't,
And
I
then that
just gave you my
journal
email address. If you want to
sends
email me, and
a
I'll send you the
draft
link.
of the staple of the
I don't want to
publication
link
in the
my
field,
existing
then
channels
look
with
it
that
over,
channel.
they critique it, They make
for various
suggestions of
reasons,
things
but
that could be
mostly
done
because
better, or questions that they feel like they have
um,
that the study doesn't answer, that need to be answered.
my
from the
two
study.
current channels
And in
are,
most
I think,
cases,
in
then,
trouble with
the
YouTube
study,
and are being
if
suppressed.
the
And
editor
I
of the
just
journal
want
feels
to
like it still has merit despite the
separate
criticism,
these
it will
channels
send it
from each
back
other.
to the researcher
And make
with
sure
the
YouTube
suggestions
realizes
and
I'm
say,
not
hey,
going
can you
to
make these changes, and we'll take
be a
another
former
look at it.
employee who
Sometimes they'll accept it or reject it immediately.
this is on them
Sometimes
in
they
every
might have some
video,
middle
because I think
ground where
that's why
they
my channels are
try
being
to
suppressed.
give
So
some guidance to the
that's the
researchers on
explanation.
how they
And I'm
could
sorry,
better
I'm
a
sure
more
many of you have
suitable,
heard
more
that
novel
explanation many times,
So
but
by
not
the
everybody
time
gets
a
to
study
hear
gets
the
published
explanation.
in a
So
scientific journal,
sometimes I have
a
to repeat
peer-reviewed
myself.
scientific
And I apologize for
journal,
that.
it has been looked over by several sets of eyes, not just the researchers who are submitting the paper.
When you're called upon to give expert testimony concerning issues in a case, sometimes you're called upon to give a wide variety of opinions, and sometimes you're called upon to give a very narrowly tailored opinion as to perhaps a single topic or
Yes,
subject.
I think that's fair to say.
And in this case, you were retained to give testimony in the state of Nevada versus Robert Telles.
Correct.
Did I reach out to you in reference to this case?
No, I believe that I was originally retained on this case by the defense investigator.
Okay, and that was prior to my involvement, to your knowledge, in this matter.
That's my understanding, yes.
You were called upon to review certain
Stacey,
evidence
I have
in this
felt
case,
that way at
to
times.
give testimony concerning
But if I
concerning
kept thinking
suicide
about
attempts
it,
for
I
those
would
that
just
are
feel so
involved in
angry. I just
charges,
don't think
or
about it
facing
anymore.
charges. That's correct.
There's nothing I can do
Let's
about
talk
it.
about
It's not a
this.
personal thing. It's just
Individuals being
business, but it's
charged with
just
the crime
a
and attempting to commit suicide. How common is it?
it's the way
Well,
things are right
first of all,
now.
it's
And
hard to
sometimes you just
say,
have to have radical
because,
acceptance,
that there's a lot
meaning
of
that
people that
you
go into
have to accept
custody,
it whether you
but
like
it's
it or not. And that's
very
unfortunate.
common. I think it's fair to say that it's probably less than 1 in 1,000 suspects or defendants who are involved in the criminal justice system. So it's not particularly common, but it is more common than it is in the general public. So people who are involved in the criminal justice system do commit suicide or attempt suicide at a higher rate than the general public.
Are there risk factors that have been identified by peer-reviewed scientific research on this issue?
Well, yes. One of the risk factors that has been identified is the severity of the crime, the severity of the charge. So if somebody is accused of a particularly severe charge, then the risk for suicide or an attempted suicide is higher.
Fair to say that the severity of a murder charge is about as serious as it can get.
I would think so.
Is an attempted suicide a reliable indicator of a guilty conscience?
Not necessarily, no.
And is that based upon research?
Yes.
And if you could explain this issue.
So there, in 2011, there was a study published of a very comprehensive research project where they looked at over 27,000 suicides that were committed by individuals who were involved in the criminal justice system. And then they compared those individuals to over 500,000 individuals who were also involved in the criminal justice system but did not commit suicide. So that they could identify, well, what makes these people a little bit different than the people who didn't commit suicide? First of all, I think it probably is obvious that individuals who came in with a mental health problem were already at higher risk, because those are the people that typically commit suicide. So it wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with whether they're being charged or not, but it's clear from the research that the stress of being accused of a crime, particularly a severe crime, as I said, can cause people to commit or attempt suicide, whether they're guilty or not. And for the study that I referenced, for instance, found that there were people who had gone through the system, were adjudicated not guilty, and after their case was done, they were still at a higher risk for suicide. Other people who had their cases dropped, but had still been accused of this crime, were at a higher risk for suicide. So it was clear from the study that it's more the process of being involved in the criminal justice system, being accused of a crime, that produces the stress that can result in suicide than guilty conscience itself. And I should add, part of the problem that even addressing that question of guilty conscience is that, remember I said earlier about what psychology is and it isn't. It's about behavior. It's not about mental processes. So to accurately answer that question, we would have to know what's in the brain of the individual. Guilty conscience, by definition, regards what's going on inside, not what the person is doing. And so there are going to be many, many cases where we don't know if the person is guilty or not. So it becomes difficult to answer that question. But we do know that some people, even after they have been found not guilty by the system, just being involved in the system is a suicide risk.
And just so we're clear, you're not called upon to give testimony concerning the guilt or innocence of Mr. Telles.
No, of course not.
That's obviously within the purview of this jury and not yours.
Absolutely.
So just so I'm clear on your testimony, if a person attempts to commit suicide after being accused of the crime, that doesn't mean that they probably did it.
It's not a reliable indicator, no.
Innocent people or people that have been exonerated of a very serious crime have attempted suicide.
Yes.
You are aware that Mr. Telles cut his arms pretty severely in this case.
I am.
Did you have an opportunity to discuss this issue with Mr. Telles?
I did.
Did he express to you concerns that he had at the time that he did this?
Objection, hearsay.
Was his explanation to you consistent with the studies that you have just referred to?
Objection, hearsay.
It's hearsay.
Again, you have given testimony concerning these studies where a person gets accused, and as a result of the accusation and the process, not necessarily guilt, but the accusation and the process, that person attempted suicide.
Yes.
And that attempt at suicide does not necessarily mean a guilty conscience.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Well,
Good morning.
Can I have some sort of overview of what you reviewed in preparation for your testimony this morning?
Certainly. I was sent the discovery from the case, which I believe included the police report, which essentially documents the investigative process that the police went through when they were assigned to this case. I think that also included some hospital records for the defendant when he was hospitalized immediately after his arrest because of the injuries to his arms. I think I saw some photos that were related to the case. And I was also provided with medical records for the defendant during his time in custody at Clark County Detention Center.
Okay. And in terms of the police reports, you mentioned that you had we call it the OR, the officer's report. Is that what you're referring to?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. How about any witness statements? Have you reviewed any of those?
I believe there were witness statements in there as well, yes.
Okay. And then did you review photographs associated with the case?
As I mentioned earlier, yes.
Video?
Don't recall seeing any video.
DNA reports?
I think I saw some DNA reports,
Okay.
yes.
Reports from like phone extractions, anything like that?
I think I saw a a log of some phone records. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
I'm talking more like the contents of a phone.
I don't recall seeing that, but that doesn't mean I didn't.
Okay. And when was it that you were provided these materials?
It was some time ago. I was retained on this case, I believe, late last year, but I couldn't tell you the exact date.
Okay. And it sounds like you interviewed Mr. Telles at some point.
I did.
When was that?
I actually interviewed him twice. I interviewed him earlier this year, I believe, and then I also interviewed him last Saturday.
Okay. And in either interview, did you record your conversation with him?
I did not.
Did you take notes?
I did.
Are your notes available?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, do you still have your notes?
Yes,
Okay, so if the court ordered you to provide them, you could do that?
I could, yes.
Okay. And you understand, of course, we don't have them yet.
I haven't been asked for them, no.
Okay. And so if we made that request and the court agrees with us, you'd be able to provide it?
Certainly.
Okay. Besides Mr. Telles,
Oh,
did
Ines,
you
Telles is trying to
interview
look.
anyone else?
I did not.
How long were the interviews that you conducted with him?
The first interview was about 3 hours, I believe. And then the more recent one was maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Did you ever administer any tests to him?
I did not.
So it was just interviews, and so you're sort of relying on his description of events.
Well, I mean, I captured his description of events.
Okay. But what he's telling you is his factual version, right?
I would assume so.
Okay. I mean, you don't ever verify that with anybody else. Is that
I did
fair?
have not.
Okay. And so you're kind of getting information from a single source?
Well, I'm getting information from him for the information that he has available to him.
Single source.
Okay.
him.
And like you could apply, I mean, sometimes are tests administered.
A proven
in
liar.
order to do psychological assessments of people,
Correct.
and none of those were done
No,
on either occasion?
no.
Okay. And you're not here to tell us anything about events that occurred on December the 2nd of 2022, correct?
Well, no,
She
no.
meant September.
I mean,
Not-
you
not on
haven't,
that date. No.
you haven't been to Bronze Circle.
Council, I believe it's September 2nd. There was a question, December 2nd. I think.
Oh, I thought I said
Just a mistake.
September. I apologize. I mean September, if I misspoke.
Yes, no,
I mean, you haven't been to Bronze Circle.
no.
You're not familiar with any of the evidence other than what you read in the officer's report?
Whatever I read in the police report, yes.
Okay. Now you mentioned that, you sometimes testify like about the reliability of memory and that sort of thing. And that is sometimes used in cases where there is eyewitness testimony to be relied upon.
Yes,
And then sometimes I would assume it's to talk about like children who recall instances of sexual abuse that occurred in the past. They're challenging their memories of that.
that's right.
And so you kind of provide, I guess, context to how they might misremember things.
In some cases, yes.
Okay. And I think you said on direct examination that that going through the criminal justice system just in itself is a stressful event,
Yes, certainly.
and that correlates with the severity of the charge.
The risk of suicide correlates with the severity of the charge, yes.
Okay. And what we're saying is, I think you said it doesn't, I think your words were not necessarily when asked if it was like the suicidality was indicative of a guilty conscience, correct?
Yes,
And so not necessarily to me means sometimes it could be.
sure. of
Okay.
course.
So there are sometimes
Exactly. Sometimes
people
it
are
could be.
suicidal because of feeling guilty about the crime they've committed.
I think that's almost certainly true.
Okay. Do you have any kind of information? I don't know if there are studies on that about how often that might be the case.
Well, because as I said earlier, we don't know what's going through a person's mind in most cases unless they tell us.
Right.
People that commit suicide don't usually have much to say.
Right, but if
And
you
so-
attempted it, you
Right.
would.
And even when they tell us, we can't always rely on that as being accurate. So it's a very difficult question to address directly through scientific study.
Because people who have attempted suicide may be unreliable narrators about why they did things, right?
Absolutely,
And they may be self-interested when they're relaying events to you.
for sure.
And they may be motivated by sort of wanting to avoid criminal responsibility when they're talking to you.
Yes, definitely.
All those factors are always at play in when you have someone charged with a crime.
Hey,
But
They
that's-
Patricia.
They can be.
Okay. And do you think there's a correlation of suicidality when people like in high positions in society have what's called like a fall from grace? Do you know what I mean? Being publicly embarrassed?
Yes, I think that that's probably a factor because when I talk about the stress of being accused of a crime, whether or not you did it,
Mhm.
there are a lot of factors that play into that. There's family, there's friends, there's finances, there's your employment, but also, as you said, if it's somebody who has a prominent position in society, just the public scrutiny of being accused, whether you're guilty or not, is sometimes inescapable. And we see cases of that all the time where people are accused of a crime, they're tried, they're found not guilty, but that scrutiny, that public scrutiny continues. Not everybody accepts a not guilty verdict, and so it can be very difficult to function in society afterwards.
But that public scrutiny would still exist and the embarrassment would still exist if you were guilty too, right?
Right.
And if, say, you were the subject of really negative articles that were published countywide, that would be a stressor that someone might experience as well, right?
Correct.
Being accused of inappropriate behavior in the workplace would be a stressor for somebody, right?
I would think so.
Being accused of being a bad manager would be stressful for somebody, right?
Almost certainly.
Okay. And sort of being accused of being kind of incompetent at your job would be a stressor if that was something that was like published to, say, the county.
Yes.
Okay. And those types of things cause stress on individuals that may or may not manifest as suicide, but they're troubling to individuals to experience. Is that fair?
Sure. Some more than others. It's all about personality and experience, but yes, I would think generally that's true.
And when you say some more than others, if they're someone who puts a lot of importance on their role in a particular office or status, it would be more upsetting for that type of person to have maybe negative articles written about them.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Could I have the court's indulgence? Thank you.
Yes, just some follow-up. Based upon your testimony and your opinion, there's not really this correlation concerning more evidence against someone for a serious crime than results in a higher likelihood of suicide.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Absolutely. So there was questions that you were asked concerning evidence in a particular case.
Mhm.
And are you able to say there's any correlation between, let's say, the more evidence of a person having committed a crime, that being correlated to the higher likelihood of suicide?
I think it's probably more accurate to say that it comes down to the individual's perception of his situation. So, for instance, if someone believes that they're in big trouble, that the cops have them dead to rights, whether or not they're guilty, that probably produces more stress than somebody who thinks, yeah, I can get out of this, or I'm good, or they don't have anything on me. So the objective status of that person's situation is probably less important than the subjective perception of the situation that they're in.
So again, that underscores, obviously you agree that human beings, we can be fairly complex and our behavior can be
Yeah, I
fairly
think that's
complex.
pretty obvious. Yeah.
It is. And oftentimes people think, well, if this person committed suicide, if he committed suicide, he must have committed the crime. You're here to dispel that common view.
Yes.
And there's actually scientific data that does so.
Right.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Class? Nothing else, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hawks. You can approach.
I think that prosecutor is really good because she was basically, he was basically like, look, oh wait, I just have to say this. Look at Ellis. He is so dissociative today.
Number 15.
That's called
Has anyone in your
dissociative.
experience ever attempted suicide in an attempt to gain sympathy from being accused?
Oh,
I think that's almost certainly true, yes. Especially when the suicide attempt is not successful.
listen to that question.
Sometimes
Listen.
people do what we call suicidal gestures, which just
Listen to this question. It really shows you where the jury's head is at with TELLES. Look at this. This is such an important question.
Has anyone in your experience ever attempted suicide in an attempt to gain sympathy from being accused?
In an attempt to gain sympathy. And he's like, oh, yes. Well, that's very possible. Man, I'm so glad that there is a member of the jury who saw that and asked that question. That is awesome.
I think that's almost certainly true, yes. Especially when the suicide attempt is not successful. Sometimes people do what we call suicidal gestures, which just refers to the fact that it kind of looks like a suicide attempt, but it wasn't fatal. And in many cases, people do that just to garner sympathy or to deflect attention from some other issue that they're concerned about.
Bingo.
Any follow-up, Mr. Draskowitz?
That's
I do think
exactly.
In reference to this, and we're not saying that's necessarily the case in this case.
Look at him.
No, I'm not at all.
And this perhaps deflection, this perhaps attempting to get sympathy doesn't necessarily equate to knowledge of guilt or guilt.
No, it definitely does not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Weber, anything else?
This doctor did not help TELLES at all.
Okay. Dr.
He just
Chambers,
gave
thank you very
general
much for your
expert.
testimony here today. You can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You are excused from this opinion. Thank you very much.
Are they going to
for
call
being
TELLES?
here. You know where to go.
I'll step down.
Oh, okay, this afternoon?
Correct. Anticipate our next witness being available after the lunch break, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, this afternoon?
Correct.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to break for lunch. During this recess, you're marched on to discuss.
They're not going to call
We then
TELLES.
want to include another material about the case, do research theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own or form express any opinion regarding the case till it's finally submitted to you by 1 o'clock.
Could we start at 1:30, given the other issues that we're
Sure.
going to address?
Okay,
on the break?
so we'll be in recess till 1:30. Thank you very much. Submitted to about the case on your own or form express any opinion regarding the case till it's finally investigate or learn about the case on your own or form express.
The reason I went back on this is because look at TELLES and how distracted he is. Yeah, I agree, Rachel. It looks like he has aged a lot in the last week for sure. He is so, I want to go back. This man, I'm going to show you dissociation too. Okay. Let me show you dissociation. Right there, right there. Wait. Looks like he's reading there.
Explain the break, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, this afternoon.
Correct.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to break for lunch. During this recess, you're marched on to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, any way regarding the case which is either by voice.
This is that is, there are just little moments of dissociation, and he was showing that all right there too, all throughout this morning. This morning he's been completely, and what I mean by dissociated is that he's not there in court. He is thinking about something totally different, and what he's thinking about is his, in my view, is his future testimony. Because other days he's constantly looking around, he's alert, but right now he's completely preoccupied with thinking about what he's going to say and writing things down. He even, while they're supposed to be standing for the jury, he's so preoccupied with what's in his mind that he has to bend down and write down. Patricia. Take that stand. Take that stand. He's going to take the stand. Sounds like if it's going to be, well, definitely if it's going to be today, it's going to be after lunch. But I feel like it's going to be today because he is so freaked out. This man cannot handle the idea that he's going to have to get it. I mean, he can't wait. He thinks he's going to, he knows that it's as a lawyer, right? That it is a huge, it'll make or break his case, his testimony. And I think we can put money on that it's going to break it. It's going to break it. He's going to just get up there and, you know, he's so disingenuous. He has lied so much. He has fabricated so much. He's made so many ridiculous claims about hacking and planting of evidence and, you know, conspiracies against him and witch hunts and smear campaigns and all of that. He's going to be all wrapped up in making sure people know that he's the victim. So that's his, this is the persona I see. The persona I see is somebody who needs to be seen as the burdened one, the victimized one. And that is almost more important to him than the details of the case. And, you know, so it'll be super important for him to portray himself as, you know, this is just, you are all witch hunting me. Yep, he's definitely formulating retorts. Definitely formulating retorts. You know, I watched a great video the other day. It was a compilation of all the different, of a bunch of different times when celebrities did clapbacks of interviewers. And I want to show that in a lighter moment on my other channel at some point, because it really shows you that it's so much better to just clap back intellectually without going low. You look so much more smart and together and likable if you don't have to go and match the level of the person that you're speaking to. If they go low, 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 low. I had a situation the other night where a woman was literally ripping me apart at the seams. I mean, trying to get me in a horrible, horrible, horrible place and trying to get me to respond, and I wouldn't. And that's because I learned over the years that you cannot win having a conversation with someone who's not going to, when that person, their entire agenda is to combat you and to get their points across rather than having a real conversation. So it's, over time, people see that you're not going to engage and you're not going to go as low, and you're going to engage on a intellectual human level. And I heard a phrase the other day. Character is destiny. Character is destiny. So people, in contemporary time, right now, right here, right now, might remember the little things that you did, the little things that you said, all that stuff. But over time, what your legacy is going to be is the character that you held and portrayed over time, even especially in the face of overwhelming odds and abuse and smear campaigns. This guy didn't do that. This guy, he went the ultimate route rather than, being like, well, I know I didn't. I know I'm not creating a hostile work environment. I know I'm not having a salacious affair with a woman at the office. I know I'm not doing all these things. No, he didn't do that. He murdered the fucking guy. And that's an issue. That's an issue that we have of these unequal reactions, these dramatic overreactions to tiny little things. It's like some people get a tiny little poke. It's like a little kid walking up to their parent and just tapping them on the shoulder, and that parent turning around and smacking them. That's what we see happen all day, every day on this platform. And in some cases, like with TELLES, you end up with a person who literally turns around and kills that person for reporting what's going on in their office. And he is a public servant. This man is supposed to be a public servant who is there for the there for the public. So it's incumbent on the press to expose any wrongdoing. So anyway, Teacup, the one thing I've tried to teach my children is that it's better to battle with your words. Using your intellect is powerful. Yes, but it's also about the words you choose, right? It's also about the words you choose, because the example I just gave of the woman who was trying to go at me the other night, she used the most violent, disgusting words at me that I've ever heard. I mean, she was literally invoking violence and mocking my childhood sex abuse and mental illness, okay? In the most grotesque and disgusting terms. And my response to that basically is, that's on you, lady. This is a reflection of you. That's a reflection of you. Yeah. Well, and that's the issue, Patricia, is you can't tell people, you can tell people to shut up, but it's not, you have no control over what people say to you, say about you. You have no control. It's about your response to them. His response was, okay, well, if I can't shut you up, I'm going to fucking kill you. Hey, OG Fish, nice to see you. Oh, it was horrible, OG Fish. It was horrible. And then she threatened to restream Lana's restream of my podcast. I mean, and then she hit her channel. It's just par for the course in some parts of YouTube. But I just wasn't gonna entertain that fucking drivel. And Stacy, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. Everything's fine. It was just one of Lana's friends, one of her simps went at me. So anyway, yeah, some people go straight for the jugular, and then you say one little critical observation of them, and all of a sudden you're no. Lana was not involved whatsoever, Stacy. It was only this person. In fact, I don't think this person and Lana are friends anymore. I think what she was trying to, it was Rachel, it was in a very tiny, tiny little part of YouTube that people shouldn't pay attention to. I pay attention to it because it's like a social studies experiment. Literally, the loyalties in that corner of YouTube change every fucking day. And it's fascinating. They will go in, they will go balls to the wall defending a person. And that's what this woman has done for Lana over the years. And then her and Lana fell out and said the most disgusting things about each other. And I think what she was trying to do is win Lana back. So she went fucking ham on me. I mean, I had a headache the next day. She literally was swinging at my brain. Now, and it didn't hurt me. I want to try to explain. I take it for what it is. I don't value her opinion. Okay. I don't value the person's opinion of me. I don't value her opinion of anything. I know what she was trying to do. I didn't respond in kind the way that she wanted me to. But still, the things that she said about me were so intentionally triggering that they did hurt my head. It did. I mean, it was meant to hurt my brain, and it did hurt my brain, but because I don't have any control over how certain things are going to hit my brain. And she specifically said certain things about my childhood trauma and my sex abuse to trigger it, to make that happen. Okay. And that is just literally fucking sadistic. Trying to argue with those who have abandoned all reason is like administering exactly. Exactly, Patricia. And there's so many other ways to say that, but that's a great way to say it. It is. It's just ridiculous. You learn after a while. I came to this platform thinking, oh, you can talk reason into anybody. You have a nice logical conversation with somebody and they'll understand. Nope. There are just some people who will on YouTube. I'm going to say this, YouTube, on fucking YouTube, they are incentivized to be the worst because it gets them money and views and transactional relationship credit. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm yelling, but that's who I get mad at when things happen like this, you guys. It's YouTube. Because I get shadow banned. But these assholes can literally come out here and say things like, Lynn, I bet you sit in front of your mirror and pull your hair and bang your head against the wall all night long. Lynn, go diddle yourself. Lynn, I bet you want to fuck blah, 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 blah. They're all things in order, to try to describe in her warped, very, very sick head what she thinks my life is about. But honestly, she was describing what I believe her life is about. And that's sad. That is really sad. It made me sad for her. But at the same time, I'm not going to take on her pain just because she can't fucking handle it on her own. So anyway, I'm sorry I kind of went on a little bit of a rampage with that. But what pisses me off is that that's the type of stuff YouTube promotes and loves. OG Fish, I always ask, where do people come up with stuff half the time? I know. Take the high road. There's a lot less traffic. That's true. That's a really good analogy right there because it's so true. I will literally change my my schedule, my life pattern to avoid traffic. So that's a good. And that's the way. That's the way a lot of people see it. They see us all like reality TV characters, not real people that can be spoke on in any way. And you know what, Stacy, I have a good life and I've had an amazing life. And it's like life is so much bigger than what you see here on YouTube for anybody, not just me, but for anybody, right? So anyway, it was Bertrand Russell who said it. Cool. All right. So we have a 2-hour break, you guys. They're not going to be back for 2 hours. And then they're going to put another doctor on the stand. But damn, I hope they fucking put TELLES on the stand. And by the way he's acting, it really looks like he's been prepped to believe that he's going to be on the stand today. That's how it looks to me, because he is so nervous. He's so pale. He's so dissociated. He's so distracted. He keeps writing things down. He has stage anxiety. He has pre-testimony anxiety. There's just no question about it. So I think we should all get well prepared to come back and watch probably a testimony that will rival that of Rocket Man's lol humiliation in court.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Because I'm going to beat every single one of you guys in court. It's going to happen. And guess what? I'm doing it pro se. And I'm going to love every single minute of it.
And she lost. She fucking lost everything. That's the type of person we're dealing with. And her and Robert TELLES come from the same ilk. Okay. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. I'm wonderful. If I just look fantastic and say fantastic words in some mumbled fashion, then you'll all believe me. Am I hearing a sidebar request?
Your Honor, I would like to sidebar here. Is this, Your Honor, sidebar?
There's no jury here.
Okay, well, that's
so
me.
You do a sidebar to keep a jury from hearing things, but there's no jury here. So
okay, then
if you have an objection, make an objection.
And of course, there's the "Can I please talk?"
Because she couldn't file on me.
I am going to advise you, Miss Oriani.
That's fine.
You do have the right not to incriminate yourself.
I do.
Don't know.
And I would not like to speak on anything that has to do with that.
Please talk.
Yep.
She did. She said she went to law school, you guys. She's such a fucking, she is one of the most prolific con women I've ever seen. I just cannot believe it. When she first came around, she told people that she was a fucking drug enforcement agent, you guys. She told people she was in a safe house. She told people that she was undercover. How are you going to go around if you're undercover? How are you going to go around telling people you're undercover? Then she told people she went to law school. Then we see Shazam running around, and then we see, and then she starts up this nonprofit and tries to lead us to believe that it's a totally serious nonprofit. And then I come out and I call bullshit, and she does 2 years of absolute ridiculous slander and defamation of me. And then sues me. This woman. So I see her and Robert TELLES in the same, they're in the same bucket to me. They're in the same bucket. I feel like we're going to see similar. Now, unfortunately, on the trial stand, it's much more controlled. It's much more controlled. There won't be as much leeway for, outbursts. They don't have this magistrate judge who doesn't know how to control the courtroom. This judge, I don't know. This judge has been pretty, light-handed. Oh yes. And of course, there's always Patricia's limerick. There once was a woman called Lana who showed 3 million words just to garner the attention and lust of a girl who was just trying to tell her she just didn't want her. So I'm pretty sure the first time Patricia unveiled that limerick was during when I was airing Lana versus Melissa's Jade, and it was so fucking funny. I think it was in that chat, Patricia. I think. I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, and the bedazzled jeans. She wears a fucking bedazzled jeans. Those are her dress up jeans. Those are her dress up jeans. So anyway, I will see you all in a couple of hours. I'll schedule the afternoon stream, and let's be ready and cautiously optimistic for some Robert Tellis on the stand trying to explain away his DNA, his possession of the cut up shoes and the straw hat in his vehicle, and the attention getting unaliving attempt, and all the pre-murder surveillance of German's house, the threatening messages. Anyway, all of that. Let's hear what he has to say to explain all of that. All right, I will see you all later. Thank you all for indulging me the last few minutes as I rant about terrible behavior that's accepted on YouTube. So I will please remember to hit the thumbs up, and I will see you back here very, very soon. Bye.